Hey folks, how's it going? I'm here with Tom, and we're doing a little video here we've been meaning to do for a while now. And it's a discussion of us sharing our top five, like I guess like most influential, profound, sentimental, just favorite games. Games that have left an impact on us one way or another. Because I was like, Tom, like that's one of the big parts of the channel is like just talking about how games affect us, how they're fun or not fun or whatever, and how they can influence you, whether it be like, I don't know, something as simple as like just enjoying the game. Like I had a really good time playing this game, or a game where it's like this completely changed me on like a cellular level. That's at least the approach I'm taking with this. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. We talked about doing a top five, so cutting it down to five was pretty difficult. And I could, like once you get to like the top 10 or 15 games for me, they're all like barely discernible in terms of like overall enjoyment for one reason or another. That's kind of like, I guess, always the difficulty with the top five is that like, or a list in general, where there's so much kind of delineation you could do. Just like, well, my favorite games that are like I remember the most fondly, the ones that were most influential, the ones that were just like the best. Like if you really like, push me on it, like the like objectively best capital G games, it's difficult to kind of really narrow that down. So I'm just kind of doing, yeah, it's hard to kind of like take all your feelings and emotions about a medium that means so much, at least a loser like me, and distill it down to something that's simple.
Hush, my friend. No, I'm with you. Like there's a lot of reasons and variables of, I guess, what can make a person feel a way about a particular game. Because like for my list, it's gonna be pretty obvious where it's like, where's Mario, where's Zelda, where's Metroid, where's like all these games that are considered like top games of like the ages, and they won't be on this list, and other games will be on this list where folks are like, what the hell, what, why? But I'll explain. I think this is this will be a very enjoyable conversation to get to know folks in the comments who I imagine they'll share their thoughts, but also for us as individuals. And I don't know, I guess it's like one of those things where it can tell a lot about a person. So I'll start things off. Number 5 on my list was a game, and for the record, just full on disclaimer, I won't be nearly as precise as Tom with your, I guess, like the information that backs your games up. I'll be more emotions, while Tom will actually have like the knowledge to back up his stuff. But I'm on Streamlabs, and I thought we were live on Twitch for a second, and I'm like, what? Sorry.
I have a heart attack every time I record with Streamlabs OBS. Being like, did I hit the right button?
Right. Because I saw someone on the little alert box that they joined, and I'm like, what?
Okay, half the time I use Streamlabs just to like screen record like something completely stupid, and I'll just be talking to myself or something. So like that's when the panic's the worst. It's just like I'm just capturing a work in progress of like something that I need to show in a forum, and like who knows if I'm streaming to the world.
Right. Oh no, they heard me say stupid stuff. All right, so number 5 for me is gonna be a little bit unusual. It's Ace Combat 4.
Yeah,
which is so peculiar, folks. Are Ace Combat 4. So Ace Combat 4 was the first game where I kind of realized, like, whoa, games are evolving. They're going at a very amazing pace of how they jumped from like Sega and Nintendo and Super Nintendo to the N64 to like, wow, these jets. Cause it's like a flight simulator, like blowing up, like you're flying around in an F-22, blowing up tanks and other fighters. And it's a fun story with like this like alternate version of like Earth, of different like countries, like Eurasia fighting like different other like sovereign nations and terrorist groups and whatever. But for me, I remember like going over to my friend's house, Alex, and he was like, yeah, I got this new game called Ace Combat 4, and he plugged it in, and I'm like, whoa, this looks real. I don't know, it was an eye-opener for me. It was a very profound eye-opening moment where I was like, is this what gaming can do? Is this where it could possibly go to jump from like, I guess, the quirkiness of like I don't know. I don't want to say I'm punching down on something, but like, it just felt very real to me. And I know in hindsight, you look back and you're like, oh, it's aged quite a bit, admittedly so. But still, that was like my eye-opening event to know that games can be more than just like Mario or 8-bit or Sonic or whatever. It can actually be like, and I'm not saying those games are beneath realistic games. I'm not one of those people, but at least gave me an idea of what games could become, which they have in a very big way have gone that direction too.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who's our age and played video games, I think we all had a game that was kind of like that, you know, especially probably in the early 2000s, because like the PS2 and the original Xbox and the GameCube were such a big leap. And that was when games kind of started going mainstream, I think, because that generation was when games were, I think before that, 3D games were so abstract that like you had to be a nerd to really appreciate them. But like starting with the PS2, I think we got good enough graphics where like normal people could get into it. And I think that's kind of what set the trajectory for everything we have with games today, the good and the bad.
Right.
But yeah, like Ace Combat 4 is like a really good example of like an early, I guess Ace Combat 4 was that the first one for PS2? Or
I believe
3
so.
Also?
It felt very early in PS2's life, at least.
Like there was a lot of games in that window that just felt so much more grandiose, and it's just because like it showed, like you said, it showed what was possible, and it was just like such a huge leap, you know, like we don't have big leaps in tech like that anymore.
That one like, felt real. I mean, I say real, like, yeah, I'm with you. To jump,
they did feel real at the time. It was ridiculous.
It was like, this eclipses the things. I mean, I remember like playing Star Fox. And I love Star Fox on the N64. It's amazing. But then like comparing that little cartoony, like, you know, I'm a space fox and I'm blowing up, you know, Andros. And I'm like, oh, that's fun. And then I see Ace Combat. I'm like, whoa, this is like an actual jet fighter. And it looks pretty damn close to the real thing. And I'm that was just the moment where I was like, oh shoot, games can go do this stuff. That's amazing. So that was a moment for me, and I will never forget it. All right, what's number 5 for you?
Okay, so I have like games from all different times. So this is probably the game that's like the newest on my list, and it's Nioh. Nioh is a Souls-like game. It's done by Team Ninja, who did Ninja Gaiden and Dead or Alive series. That's like kind of like their big claims to fame. And I had been a staunchly anti-Souls-like guy. I wasn't a huge fan of the genre beforehand because it was just like slow and difficult. And those are like the antithesis of what I really enjoyed in video games. So we got recommended this, me and my friend, on our old live stream show, I Am Games, by people like, well, you know, it's Souls-like, which you don't like, but it's Team Ninja, which you do. So like put them together, will you like it? And I bounced off the game really hard. I just wasn't enjoying it at all. And I was like on stream just raging and getting upset. But then I was like determined to not let the game beat me because I had played a couple of the Souls games and I wasn't really feeling them. But I don't know, I just like off stream, I got like halfway through the game and then I just kind of let it go for a while. Then last year, or no, not even last year, earlier this year in June, my friend, real life friend Devin, he like bought it and was like, oh, you want to start playing Nioh? I'm like, oh God, not again. But I got it on PC and something just clicked and I just beat the shit out of Nioh. I
never
just
even heard
couldn't
of it
stop
before.
playing it. It's basically it's a feudal Japan setting, but you play as like a British guy. It's based on like all the characters are based on real historical figures. So there is like a guy who went to Japan and became a samurai. He's like the history's first weeb, and that's who you play as in this game. But like there's demons and all this crazy shit because it's totally fake and made up and exaggerated. But it's really fun because it takes like the faster kind of nature of like the combat that Team Ninja does, and blends it with the Souls formula, that like really like slow trepidatious pace and like everything's out to get you and like huge odds like stacked not
These
in your
monsters
favor.
are cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool looking game. It's got a really unique flavor. The story is batshit insane. It's a huge grind. Like, I have a whole video on my old channel, I Am Games, talking about how the game is too dense for its own good. And I do believe that, you know, because like I was saying, like, there's so many systems, because it takes like the difficulty of Souls and then it adds like the loot game from like something like Diablo. So there's like 15 bajillion levels of rarity and like randomly generated areas that you can just keep replaying over and over again. And some of the guys who were in the comments when I like was like still poo-pooing on it, they were like, well, the game doesn't really get good and you don't really start being able to like build out your class until you're on like new game plus plus plus. I'm like, if I got to play this game 4 times before I actually get my head around it, I don't know if I want to get into it. But I was just bored over the summer and I started playing it because my friend wanted to get into it, and I just got hooked that time. And I don't know, it just was really rewarding, and it takes everything that's like good about Souls, I feel, in terms of like the gameplay, because like it has levels instead of like a connected world like Dark Souls 1 does, which is probably Dark Souls 1's greatest strength. Which is why I'm pretty excited also about Elden Ring, because they're kind of bringing that back.
That game looks fun.
It looks really cool. We'll definitely have to cover it at some point when it comes out. We can both get our asses handed to us on stream or something. But yeah, this just takes a lot of like what worked with the Souls formula and adds a lot of what I generally like about action games and character action games, and the result was really good. Do it.
I'm so behind on any of the Soul games, because I've never played Dark Souls. I've never played Bloodborne. It sounds like I have a lot I could play. Ghost of Tsushima, I was told, was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's not really a Souls-like game, but it is really good.
Maybe that's just the stigma I carry, where I'm like, it's Ghost of Tsushima. It's like Dark Souls. So
it's a guy with a sword. It must be Dark Souls.
This next game, number 4 for me, I think you'll like this one. And again, like, I'm so unorthodox compared to like most normal like people who play games. But well, are there any normal people who play video games? But for me, number 4 is Doom 2016, and to an extent, and kind of like a hand in hand, but Doom Eternal. So I kind of consider both to be one and the same to a degree. Though I know that Doom Eternal has some pretty big changes, but like they still feel like peanut butter and jelly in a way. So Doom 2016, which I believe it was you who convinced me to get it. I was coming off of the cuff of playing things like Overwatch and Hearthstone, and I didn't start playing Doom 2016 until around like 2017 or 18. And around that time, I was giving up on Overwatch and Hearthstone. I was just so sick of it. I was sick of multiplayer. And I was like, I don't know how to decompress with games anymore. I don't. Because a big reason why I quit Overwatch and Hearthstone was just due to the stress that came from like losing. I'm a sore loser, big time. And I'm like, I just want to play a good campaign. I want to play a good, strong campaign with a story, and that's fun. And I don't feel like I'm up against people. Instead, just give me a good like AI to fight. And I think it was you and Paleo who were like, Doom 2016, Saber, you might like this. And I played it. I loved it. I got really good at it too. And then when Doom Eternal came out last year, I just fell in love with that as well. I love the hell out of that game. Oh, what the hell. And yeah, I was like, I felt like a bit of a greenhorn, where I'm like, I knew about Doom, and Doom guy. I know about the hell stuff, but I was relatively new enough to like be kind of just thrown into the mix of like, what's going on? Like, what's this universe? Which I guess was okay timing, because some of the things in Doom 2016 Eternal, from what I can tell, was like not retcon, but at least kind of a revised lore, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, the original Doom series didn't have much. I mean, there was lore, but it was never front and center. You play Doom, the original, and there's like a couple text crawls in between chapters, and that's it. It's mostly just gameplay. Like, there's like a story, like a development story for the original Doom, how they actually originally had a much more in-depth story. And I think it was, was it John Romero or John Carmack? One of them was like, no, we can't have any story. It's just gameplay. So they cut all of that and just focused on like making craziest first-person game they could.
Well, all I know is that Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, which I guess I'm kind of cheating by putting them both as number 4.
That's fine.
It was a very much needed dose of games can be fun and they don't have to be multiplayer. And if anything, actually, the world of like the solo player campaign is incredibly rich. And there's games like Bug Fable or Ori and the Blind Forest. I think it's another one. There's Psychonauts. There's a lot of games out there that I need to sit down and just play. And like I played Breath of the Wild in 2017. And I was like, that was fun. Like, because I played Doom 2016, and I'm like, maybe there's something about these one-player games that are a lot of fun. And I played Breath of the Wild afterwards, and I was like, that was a lot of fun. Like, I'm enjoying that. I think that was 2018, actually. But all in all, Doom was the one that reintroduced me to the world of, like, non-multiplayer video games. And I've been enjoying that ever since. I actually need to pursue it more, but still, like, I appreciate Doom in a very fun, explosive, aggressive, heavy metal, beating the hell out of demons way of like, yeah, games can be fun on your own.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I've always been more of a single player kind of person in general. So it's weird. Like video games are obviously their own medium, but I've always equated a good single player experience to something more like going to a movie. Whereas a good multiplayer experience is like playing a sport, like esports. That's kind of where the whole term comes from. Like, you're more about like trying to get better and thrive on like the competitive nature when you're playing multiplayer. It's very much not even so much about the game, but it's about you and your performance. Whereas when you're playing single player, it's much more of an immersive experience, but getting lost in the experience that they're trying to deliver to you. And you can make it competitive, of course. You can do speed runs. You can, try and like impose challenges on yourself. People do this all the time. But like as intended, it's much more about kind of giving you the best experience possible, which is just something I've always gravitated more towards in general.
I agree. It's something where, and because there's a pick later on that will explain a lot about my, I guess, experience with gaming, but I can wait for now. All right, what's number 4 for you?
My number 4 is probably Metroid Fusion.
Okay. I've actually played that.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I mean, I talked about it a little bit in the Metroid Dread review, how it kind of like opened my eyes to what else Nintendo had in store besides just Mario and Zelda and stuff, because I had missed the SNES, never had one. It was Sega Genesis. Sega Genesis does what Nintendo, and
take that
N64, which I had next. Oh yeah. We'll have words about that at some point, I'm sure. I can't even like argue in good faith. Like, it's just blind fanboyism. The SNES is like the better console, but like I'll die on the hill of defending Sega Genesis.
That would be a fun video if you and Paleo have a debate and I'm like the moderator.
Yeah, I'm down.
I'm writing that down. That'd be fun.
Cool. But going back to Metroid, like it just was like such a different kind of game than anything I'd played from Nintendo before. I had just expected it to be Mario in space, like a bouncy, kid-friendly, all-ages romp, and it was just so much more dark and foreboding, and like to kind of like have that atmosphere that it did on like a Game Boy Advance, like even with it didn't was before they had a backlight or anything, it was just like pieces of garbage that you just like had to like angle just right to get the screen to actually be readable, but like it just worked so well and it was so fun to play. And I don't know, it really opened my eyes to that entire genre because I had never had any real experience with it before. And the title itself and like the annals of Metroid history, I suppose, is a little bit divisive because it's a lot more straightforward. You have like navigation rooms that tell you exactly where to go, where like the whole point of Metroid generally has been exploration and being like isolated all by yourself. And they kind of upended the entire formula. And the whole point of Metroid Fusion was changing things, and they changed the way Samus looked. They changed the way the exploration worked. They changed the kind of story. Like they made it much more open. I don't know, like open, but like active story. Like there was monologues, like Samus would be talking to herself in these elevator sequences. You learn more about it. It was just all those things I didn't know were different at the time. I just knew that I was totally into it, and which is why I was so excited for Dread to come out, because like there was so much more you could go after this story, and like changing Samus so drastically. And I don't know, I just think it was a really fun, good game. Hard as hell to play, but like incredibly fun. And the SAX having like a horror element on a tiny little Game Boy game was really bold, but it worked out so well.
I played it, and there was a very brief amount of time in the 2000s where I actually like would read Electronic Gaming Monthly, and
Yeah.
I'd be like, "What do they recommend? What should I buy?" And they recommended Metroid Fusion. And I'm like, I'd never played Metroid before, but I'll play it. It's got like a 96 for their rating, and I played it and I liked it. I never beat it, but I was like, "This is fun." And I recall like playing the old Metroid, like just trying it out like years later. And I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel as like refined. So
Yeah.
Metroid Fusion though, I again kind of thrown into a story, a game that felt like it had already established like lore and game mechanics. And I was just kind of holding on for dear life. But that all being said, I still enjoyed the hell out of it.
Awesome. Can't recommend it enough.
All right. Number 3 for me, I would say number 3 for me is Kingdom Hearts.
Okay, the original.
The original. And I did a video about that on the channel. So for folks who've already watched it, they already have an idea of what I'm about to say. Kingdom Hearts came out, and this is where it kind of hits more of a sentimental, like, I guess, spot for me versus the game itself being completely like amazing. Because I played the game recently again, and I'm like, there's some flaws in this game. There's some mechanics in the game of like fighting and boss fights and enemies where I'm like, this is sloppy. But as far as like the aesthetics, the music, the story, which the dialogue is incredibly corny, where it's like, darkness is the true darkness, and if your heart's full of darkness, and it's like, well, the light's the light, we can fight back. And I'm like, oh my god, this is so so heavy-handed with its dialogue. But that all being said, the game came out at a time where it got me hyped for like I was like, oh, it's Kingdom Hearts, and I just want to know so much more about this, because I played Final Fantasy X, and I want to play another Square game, and also I'm going to Disney with my family, and I can't wait. And I remember like playing the game, being hyped, going to Disney with my family. It was amazing. And then my parents got divorced afterwards, and then Kingdom Hearts kind of became a shelter, a bit of a time capsule for me to jump back into the game and be like, this game resonated with me as something that existed before my parents got divorced. So yeah, it became a very sentimental game to me, and still is to this day. And again, it's got issues. Like, gosh, it's got issues. But it's such a quirky, bizarre series. Like it kind of like it doesn't make sense. It's like, how did this thing get picked up? How was it approved? And how is it successful? It confounds all logic, but I guess it just works. And yeah, I gotta say, it's a fun game. It's a fun series. It's wacky as all get out, but Kingdom Hearts struck a note with me that I don't think many other games will ever come close to.
It's definitely charming in a way that few games are. The bizarre nature of it kind of commands your attention.
Right.
Just like, why is Cloud standing next to Mickey Mouse?
Right.
Just like a sentence that shouldn't exist, but here we are.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense. Like,
and I think what's also important to mention with the original Kingdom Hearts is like, this is, before we had, the multi-game rosters from Smash. This was like crossovers in games in like 2001 were like not nearly as common as they are today. So blending two big IPs from two different companies was not something that was very often done, which
Right.
kind of made it even more of like an anomaly and commanded your attention even more. So it's like, because like video games weren't as big as they are now. So like, why would Disney, like this huge, massive company, team up with Square Enix, a big gaming company, but gaming didn't have anywhere near the clout that they have now. Like, why are they teaming up and doing this? This is bizarre. But it really worked, obviously.
It works.
Games coming out to this day still.
Right. It doesn't make any sense because it seems like there's such a juxtaposition, but maybe that's why it worked, where it's like these Square Enix characters like Leon or whatever or Sephiroth, and it's like there's Mickey Mouse and Donald and Goofy, and it's like what is this like synergy that somehow exists between these characters and universes, and they somehow work? Whatever. I think that's where the corniness is important. I think the corniness of Kingdom Hearts makes it easier for Disney to exist, and because if it was any more serious, it would have been too hostile to the, I guess, wholesomeness and of Disney. Whatever, it works. But yeah, Kingdom Hearts. That's my number 3.
Cool.
What about you? What's number 3 for you?
My number 3 is the original Metal Gear Solid for PlayStation 1.
Regale me, because I feel like Metal Gear is like one of those series that's like, holy shit, sit down, let me tell you about it kind of series.
It's a lot. I mean, it's fantastic. It still pains me to this day that I haven't played Metal Gear 1 or 2, which for a while were only available on the MSX computer in Japan. Because like a lot of people think Metal Gear started with Metal Gear Solid on the PS1, but it's technically the 3rd game in the series, and the first 2 were never released stateside for a long amount of time. But like Solid functions essentially as like not a soft reboot, but like designed to be an entry point for more people, because most people never had an MSX computer. You were talking about how Ace Combat 4 was like one of your games that like kind of like changed how video games were perceived by you. That's what Metal Gear Solid was for me, because up until playing this game, I'd only really played Sega Genesis and N64. You know, I played Sonic 3 and Banjo-Kazooie and Star Fox 64, you know, and these were all video games, and they didn't really have any more aspirations other than being good video games, which is fine. I prefer that, honestly, especially now that I'm older and have less time to sink into 80-hour JRPG melodrama storylines. But at the time, being a complete NEET with no life at all, getting a PlayStation 1 later, like much later, and sitting down and playing Metal Gear Solid, it was like, this is like completely beyond what I ever even thought a video game could be. There's like voice acting and a serious story and like directed cutscenes, and like they're saying swear words and people are getting shot and dying, you know? It was such a tonal shift. And I'd known these games had existed because like I read Electronic Gaming Monthly religiously.
EGM.
It was the best gaming mag. And,
it was hands down. It was the magazine that introduced me to like the sex video games. They had a magazine dedicated talking about like of all the different sex games, and needless to say that magazine became a prized possession for a few years. Or I'm like, I'm keeping this.
Oh god, yeah, and so Metal Gear Solid was just, it was a very serious, but at the same time kind of tongue-in-cheek, because like that's the interesting thing about Metal Gear is that it's ridiculous, but it takes itself seriously a lot of the times too. Because like you'll have like this really tense infiltration story where like, you know, you have a secret agent kind of guy going in, sneaking into this military base in Alaska that's been taken over by terrorists who are going to like launch a nuclear weapon, and it's like, but his name is Solid Snake.
I love it.
You know, and like Colonel. You get to one point where you have to like crawl through these vents and like to infiltrate and like save one of your contacts in there who's been captured, and like you just have to fight a bunch of guys after the contact escapes and like steals his outfit, and he's just sitting there butt naked, knocked out with his ass in the air, and you're shooting and fighting a bunch of guys, but like he's just there naked, and it's like, why? I don't know. And then later you have to like find the contact Meryl, and she's like the only girl in the entire base. So how do you find Meryl? Even though she's disguised as a soldier, you have to creep around this room and find her female looking ass so you can figure out who she is among all the other male guards. And it's just like, the story is serious. The ramifications for failure are massive, but like it has fun all the time, you know? And like the famous scene of like you're fighting one of the bosses, Psycho Mantis, and he like can read your memory card and talk about the other games you've played by Konami, you know? And it's just like, it's just bizarre. It's this strange fusion of like very serious storytelling. It's anime in that regard, you know. It's very like anime can be very serious but have its moments of levity, and this blended them in a very similar fashion. And to have that kind of like gritty, much more fully realized narrative experience in a video game was unheard of to my palate at the time, and it totally expanded my mind of like video games can be like this. This is insane. And I mean, even I go back to it now, and like the gameplay is okay. It's pretty basic, you know. And like when I replay Metal Gear, the gameplay is not my favorite part. My favorite part is just the madness that is Hideo Kojima's writing and the bizarre ideas he comes up with. And that was the first time I really experienced something to that degree in an interactive medium.
I played a little bit of Metal Gear myself. Like, again, it's weird. I had a few games recommended because of EGM, and I went after them and dipped my toe in the water because I felt like I was supposed to. But like, then there are other moments where like during the N64, I never played Super Mario or Mario N64 or any of the Zelda games really. It's weird. But that being said, like I did play a little bit of Metal Gear, and yeah, like it is very anime. I need to play it, replay it, like with a cleaned out palette now that I'm older, and just revisit it and give it a shot.
Yeah, I need to replay Metal Gear Solid 2 because the end of that game basically predicts the internet and everything. It's crazy.
All right, my turn.
Do it up.
All right, actually, before I get to the top two on my list, I do want to give some honorable mentions. Pikmin, it was one that I enjoyed. I really enjoyed Pikmin. I like the universe. I think it's cute with little plants and kind of like it's like you're in the shrubs of a garden or a grassy field, and you're fighting like the little insects and like frogs and birds on like a micro level, and that was fun. I really enjoyed Pikmin. It's cute. Though it always broke my heart when I like lost a Pikmin. I'm like, no, start the day over, start over. We're not losing a single one. StarCraft was another one where, like, because I played the original StarCraft, I loved it. Then I played StarCraft 2 when it came out like a decade later, and I really loved StarCraft 2. I was very involved, and that was a very odd era because like YouTube had a very small window in like 2010, 2011, where like Husky StarCraft, all these StarCraft like commentators, Day9, which Day9 is a class act, and he very much so stuck the landing with being like a person and not just known for one game. But like I was all about the StarCraft scene, and I was very competitive playing multiplayer, and that was, I think, a reintroduction post World of Warcraft where I was like, I hate fighting. I get very competitive and I get very aggressive when I play against people and I lose. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm a bit of a bastard when it comes to multiplayer. I think I broke my monitor once punching it when I lost a StarCraft game.
I've broken many a controller in my day.
I broke my phone, 2 monitors, punched the wall, 2 walls, and I've done some pretty stupid shit and broken things while raging at games, and I have not done it since in like 3 years after quitting Hearthstone and Overwatch. I'm like, I'm not doing it again. Like, I don't want to be an asshole. So, number 2, Halo. This one's also a little bit of me cheating. So I know that like Halo 1, 2, and 3, I know there's differences between all 3. But like, you know, if I had to pick one, I'd say Halo 2 is probably the game. But like, God, I mean, I feel like I was like handpicked with my age and my demographic, where I was coming off of the cuffs of like the PS2 and playing those games and the N64 and the GameCube, and I was like, I'm enjoying this. I'm having so much fun. And then I remember seeing like advertisements and chatter for Halo, and folks being like, this is just such a wonderful game. It's amazing. It was a story that sold me, where it's like humanity's fighting back against this alien horde, and it's FPS, and it's amazing. And I remember like I actually spent my own money on an Xbox. That was one of my first big purchases. And my buddy Robert and I played the hell out of Halo 1, 2, and 3. I mean, in particular, Halo 2. I recall going to the GameStop at midnight, standing in line, getting Halo 2, coming home, and this is going to sound like a stigma or a stereotype. I had my Mountain Dew with Robert, and we had Domino's Pizza, and we played Halo 2 for the rest of the night, and we beat the fuck out of that game. I mean, we were discovering things in the game where it was like Easter eggs without being told about them. Like, we discovered them ourselves. And yeah, we cleaned it up and down. And then Halo 3 came out, and it felt like such a conclusion, because that came out like my freshman year of college. And it was almost like, gosh, how can I describe it? It felt like Halo was there for my teen years and then wrapped up before I went off to my college years. And it was cathartic to me. It was like a send off, like, you know, wake me when you need me. All right, Chief, I'm gonna go to college now. I love you. Like, even though there's like Halo ODST and Reach and whatnot, but still, Halo. Gosh, what can I say that already hasn't been said about Halo? The lore, the mechanics, the music, just everything about it was just outstanding. And I guess, like, where other folks have, like, you know, what is like the iconic thing that existed during your age? And I know there's multiple ones for us, but Halo exclusively felt unique to my teen years, and just I loved it. When I listen to the music, I still get goosebumps. Halo is amazing.
It really is,
and it set the bar for FPS. And I, if I'm correct, Halo also saved the Xbox. Because that was the only reason why I bought it. I was like, I can't find this game anywhere else. I have to get an Xbox. And I got an Xbox specifically for Halo.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good purchase on Microsoft's part, getting that on the Xbox and getting it on launch. I can't imagine where they would be right now without that. That franchise built that entire brand.
It saved the Xbox. Saved them. It was, and I remember like playing Xbox Live with Halo 2, and I'm like, what? You can play against folks on Xbox Live? This is insane.
Yeah, right? Halo 2 was such... I mean, we're still feeling the ripple effects of Halo 2 today. Like, everything that is console multiplayer was invented in Halo 2. Like, the reason we have matchmaking is Halo 2. Like, they're the ones who basically came up with it. Or, like, we're going to try and give a console experience multiplayer that, like, isn't bad. It was just so different at the time. Because, like, to dovetail off what you were saying, like, if I was going to do some honorable mentions before going to my number 2, one of them was absolutely going to be Halo 2.
Yep.
That game was incredible. I mean, I think everyone has a great Halo 2 story. My Halo 2 story is, like, my birthday is November 8th, and Halo 2 came out November 9th, 2004. Yeah. And I bought an Xbox for my birthday the day before Halo 2 came out. So I had to go to GameStop and buy an Xbox. And of course, I can't buy Halo 2 yet, so I buy Halo 1. And I'm talking to the guy, and he's like selling me the shit. He's like, oh, dude, you're going to love it. It's fucking great. Halo's the best. I'm like, I know. I can't wait to fucking play it. And he's like, dude, you know what? I'm like, what? He's like, they're in the back. I'm like, what? He's like, we have the copies. They're in the back. I'm like, holy shit. He's like, I can't sell it to you, but do you want to hold it? And he goes in the back and gets a copy of Halo 2. I'm just like, dude, oh my fucking God. It was so great. He's like, I'll see you tomorrow. And I'm like, So
dude, it's like,
home, played all of Halo 1, got Halo 2 the next day. It was awesome.
Dude, I love it. It's like inside out with like the core memory being formed. Like this memory's gonna be with you forever. That's amazing. Yeah. Back in the day when actually, people gave a damn when someone had a physical copy on site. Well, I guess it's kind of whatever, but still.
It was the only way to get it. So like you couldn't just like, I'll go to work, I'll have it to auto download at midnight, and it'll be there when I get home the next day,
Right, right.
Like you had to take the pilgrimage,
It's interesting how like hardships we can translate over to like experiences that we look back like it was hard, but we earned it. Versus nowadays, where it's a lot more convenient, which is, let's be real, like it's very preferable in a lot of ways. I don't want to have to trek out over and over and over for a game, but like to stand in line and earn Halo 2 and be there for that launch, that's gonna be with me to the day I die. I love that memory.
Yeah, those memories. I mean, I still remember perfectly in 2006 when I was in line for the Wii launch with my friend Devin, the same guy who got me into Nioh. It was ridiculous. Like we were the first people in line. There was a huge big line after us. We were all just hanging out and shooting the shit. I mean, you can still do that. Like people still kind of like have all those midnight releases and stuff. They're not as common anymore. But yeah, it was definitely a really good vibe. But Halo 2, man, like that was what I got Xbox Live for. That was the first real multiplayer game I ever played seriously. Totally bad at it, but that wasn't the point. I have so many memories of just landing and playing online Halo 2 with my friend Mike, who still plays Halo this day. We're probably going to play Infinite day one when it finally drops.
Let me know. I'll play with you all.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely. We're going to put too many hours into that fucking game. I mean, we still call Mike's brother Window because one time we were all playing Halo 1 Hang 'em High, and he was just like sucking so bad we were griefing him. We locked him out of the house, broke the window to get back in.
What? I love it
because he was so pissed. And to this day we call him Window because that's his legacy.
Legendary. I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, Halo 2 is a huge impact. It's like I think Halo 2 specifically, like it really felt like maybe this is just like me being like the perfect age, you know, and like just naive enough to like think that things aren't terrible, but like it felt like such a cultural like milestone, like uniting moment. Like everybody I knew who was even remotely into video games was jones as fuck to play Halo 2.
Right.
And it was just such a impactful moment in video games when it's just like, oh, this is a big deal.
Well, it's like the technology was growing at a pace that like also was like a good parallel with the demographic, your main demographic. Because it's like a bunch of like awkward teenage guys and girls, and then like we hear this trumpet sounded in the distance, and then some glorious GameStop employees holding Halo 2 above his head, and everybody's like, I don't care about Nintendo, I want to play Halo 2. Like, I want to play Halo 2. I want to play the campaign. I want to go back to Earth and stop the Covenant. I want to get into Blood Gulch with my friends and shoot them. Like, it felt like a rite of passage in a lot of ways. And it felt so appropriate for, like, our angsty little teenage demographic that was, like, primed for this. Like, I mean, yeah. I can't really... It's hard to really describe it in an efficient way, but, like... The 2000s, with millennials being teenagers, we had so many things on a silver platter that were just perfect for us. Like, and Halo 2 is one of those things.
Yeah.
You said it was uniting, and I completely agree.
It was uniting because there was just a lot less noise, you know? Like, Halo 2 was like one of the handful of big releases that year. And everyone was just on the same page, and it was just really, really impactful. Another honorable mention before I get to my number 2, and this, anyone who knows me is gonna be like, why is this on an honorable mention? I'll explain it. Is Guilty Gear Gear X2. The reason that's an honorable mention and not on the list proper is because I was kind of putting this list together as like impactful games in terms of like impacting me as someone who plays video games, like teaching me something new or like expanding my palette a bit. And I love, if this was favorite games, Guilty Gear would absolutely be on here. But like, I'm not a huge fan of fighting games. I play them very casually, and like my love for Guilty Gear is almost in spite of the fact that it's a fighting game. There's just so much to its aesthetic that I love. I mean, my entire story of getting into Guilty Gear was that I was actually really into Soul Calibur 2, playing with friends, and I went and bought Soul Calibur 2 from GameStop, and I had a little bit of extra store credit. I was like, well, I'll get a game with swords on Game Boy, so I can play Soul Calibur like game when I'm at school. And the Guilty Gear Advance just happened to be there for the Game Boy for $10. I'm like, oh, just grab the sword on it. I'll go get that. Little would I know, like 2 weeks later, I would like forget Soul Calibur exists and just playing Guilty Gear Advance because like I love the characters and the combos and stuff so much more. And like Guilty Gear Advance has like the worst music ever because like Guilty Gear, the main series, is known for having like a crazy like heavy metal soundtrack, and I was like a huge metal kid in high school, but like because it was a Game Boy, it couldn't play the music properly, so it just sounded like 8-bit NES like badly arranged chip tunes. Like the melodies were really catchy, and I'd find myself humming them, but it's like this game just sounds like kind of weird. And then eventually I went to Blockbuster. This was that old. and they had Guilty Gear for PS2. I'm like, there's a PS2 version? What the fuck? So I bring that home and I turn it on, and like all of a sudden it's like the fucking heaviest metal soundtrack of all time, and all these songs that I'd like loved just as like shitty little Game Boy games are all of a sudden like the most intense shit I've ever heard in my life. And like the Guilty Gear soundtrack was the first album I ever torrented because you couldn't buy it, but I needed it in my life. So, you know, I got to learn how to use BitTorrent and all this shit and went through all the fucking sites trying to find the music because it was just so impactful. It had the most beautiful artwork. Like, the sprites were so detailed at the time that they were more detailed than you could even do with 3D models. I don't know. I got really into that game.
And well, that's the one with that one girl that like Sakurai said like she's too spicy for for Smash, right?
That's actually King of Fighters,
okay,
which
my bad.
Which is another fun fighting game series. I never got into that one as much, but also really good. But yeah, play Guilty Gear. It's really fun. Good stuff. My number 2 is going to be Shinobi for the PS2.
All right.
So this is like probably the most left field game I have on here. Shinobi didn't review very well when it came out. It got like 7s. It was like an average, like it's okay. Was kind of the critical reception to it, even at EGM. I would never have played it if I didn't get a copy of the official PlayStation magazine, which came with demo discs every month, which is a lost art that I still pine for every day, even though they're totally irrelevant now. Buying a magazine, getting free games with it was awesome.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of like my favorite games, and this is one of them. This demo disc had War of the Monsters, which is another one of my favorite PS2 games, and Shinobi. And I remember looking at it and thinking it was really cool. So I was like, oh, I'll try this out. And it was amazing. The Shinobi is way better than it gets any credit for. The problem was that at the time, God of War and Devil May Cry and stuff had come out and like kind of reinvented what people expected from 3D action games, you know, like this much more visceral kind of like air juggling combo based kind of stuff that was just like a real breath of fresh air. And like even more importantly, like Devil May Cry and God of War like solidified this is how an action game in 3D should control, this is how the camera should work. Like it just like finally figured out the rules that like everyone had been struggling with for years, ever since the original PlayStation, trying to figure out how to best control, you know, bring these kind of like beat 'em ups and side-scrolling action games that work so well in 2D, and how to get the camera and the control scheme working to make them kind of feel just as fun while also bringing all the benefits of 3D. Shinobi on PS2, by contrast, was very much a classic Sega game in 3D. There were no combos, there was no power-ups or merch store to buy new items or equipment or anything like that. There was no checkpoints in the levels. If you died at any point, you went all the way back to the beginning. It was just like a hard as balls, hardcore, old school sensibility Sega game. It was just so stylish. Like if you've ever seen Shinobi PS2, it's this really badass looking ninja guy with a mask on that makes him look like he has 4 glowing blue eyes, and he has this huge, long, fucking glowing red scarf that perfectly follows you around as you move and creates this like gorgeous aesthetic. And the way they kind of have like this fake cloth sim, so it kind of just flows as you move around. It just makes you just look like this like inhuman thing as you dash around. And there's no combos in the game because it's like anti-combo. The whole point is that if you play the game really well, you can kill everything, including the bosses, in one hit. So every time you kill an enemy, the sword doubles in strength. So the next enemy you hit, well, you'll do double damage. And if you kill him, now you're doing quad damage. You hit the next guy, you do 8x damage. And so if you start killing the small things in an area, because each encounter has a certain amount of guys that are attacking you, if you attack them in the right order, you can kill every single one of them in one hit. And if you clear an entire room quick enough, it does this awesome cinematic execution where it cuts to each corpse. That's because every time you kill somebody, they get frozen like in the middle of their death animation, and then it'll cut to like the ninja sheathing his sword in like this cool like scripted sequence, and all the corpses just split in half and like into blood and goo behind him, and they all die at the same time.
Yeah.
And it never gets old. It's the fucking sickest shit of all time. And all the boss battles will summon ads and start like throwing like little guys at you that you've been fighting through the level. But if you kill all of them fast enough and then hit the boss dies in one hit, and then you're the ultimate fucking badass. It's just hard as nails, but like it just aesthetically it was gorgeous. And like I've taken such a strong inspiration from it. Like Izumi, my character for my game, and her long scarf is just like a direct homage to this game, because like it's my aesthetic. If I make a video game, like a 3D video game, it's going to look like this game. Because just like aesthetically, tonally, gameplay wise, it was just so informative in terms of like, this is the coolest fucking shit of all time, you know? So yeah, it's definitely up there, dethroned only by one other game, which we will get to.
Sweet. I'll look into that one. I like that you've got games on your list that aren't as like, we're not being basic ass bitches with like Mario and Zelda, and I'm not saying that those are bad choices and that folks.
No, absolutely not.
But like that we got some like obscure variety or things that wouldn't be considered like insanely mainstream. Well, do I say that saying things like Halo, Kingdom Hearts?
Yeah, I mean it's hard not to like respect those titans, because like they're titans for a reason. But you know, there's stuff off the beaten path that's interesting if you know where to look.
Right. Well, number one for me. It's now I feel like a bit of a hypocrite being like our choices are so like different. I'm about to say a game that's like considered like one of the most popular games probably of all time.
Clash of Clans.
Right, yeah, Mobile Strike. Now, World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft is my number one, and never has there been a game that has more of a direct impact on me as a person than WoW. I will make this story fast. I remember playing Warcraft 3 back in the day and loving the story, being like, oh, I'm the orcs fighting the undead, and it's so cool. I love this world. It's so neat. And I like the cartoony like characters. It's kind of like fantasy, but like not like super anatomy accurate humans. It's like the kind of cartoon with their big shoulders, and the buildings like kind of a bit like stylized. It was neat. I liked it a lot. And then my cousin Brian, who was like 4 years my senior, he was like a dumb teenager, and me being a dumb middle schooler. Maybe I was in like 7th grade or something, or 8th grade. No, I think it was in 9th grade. So he's like a senior in high school or a freshman in college. And we had our Christmas get together with our family, and we like would get a lodge. And I remember hanging out in his room, and he was going through that broody, like teenage year thing as well, where it's like, we don't want to hang with a family and make puzzles or like do puzzles. We want to play, we want to like eat junk food in our respective like little bunk bed rooms and watch like movies and play video games and talk about like things that we think are cool. And my cousin Brian's like, yeah, it's called World of Warcraft. And he's like, it's multiplayer. You get your own character and you get to run around and hang out with other characters. And I remember him giving me like his little Warcraft guidebook, because he already had the game. He's already in there. And I was sold. I was like, this sounds unreal. Like beyond anything I could ever comprehend for games. And I begged my parents, I begged them to update from dial-up to DSL. Mm-hmm. And then begging them to let me use their credit card to get World of Warcraft. Took forever to download it. I was like tunnel visioned. I wanted this game. And I recall spawning in on my human warrior called Saber Steve and running around the little human zone. And my mind, like, it almost felt like the floodgates of ecstasy opened, where I was like, this is the coolest shit I've ever played, I've ever done, period. I worshipped it. I was sold. I was addicted to it. I remember being in like 10th grade in like classes, just number crunching how many lions I have to kill in this stupid zone to get enough experience to break 40 so I can go get my horse mount and also get plate armor. And I remember vividly the night, it was like 1 a.m. I finally get to level 40 and I got my horse, and it gives you like a 60% speed increase, but it was so glorified to me. So I guess like the status of having a mount in the game was insane. And I remember getting on that horse and running around, and like, I didn't know I said ecstasy already. or ecstasy, whatever. But like, I remember getting on the horse, running around, and I actually think like I don't know what chemical was pumping through my brain, but it felt like someone took my brain and just dunked into a tank of pure serotonin, or dopamine or whatever. I don't know. I felt like pure bliss, like rushing across my brain. And I've never had that feeling since. It was
all downhill from there.
It was all downhill. But I got so addicted to the game to the point where it almost destroyed friendships. My parents were like, "You're failing school." It almost flunked me out of college. I met online friends through it. That was my introduction to the online world, by the way. Like, I know that I did things like AIM and played like on websites like Gundam, like video games from Cartoon Network or Toonami or whatever. But World of Warcraft was my teacher for like getting into Ventrilo calls and talking to people. Like, it's kind of bizarre to be on Discord talking with you guys, like, you, Tom, and Paleo and other people, and all of it, because it's a lot more sophisticated and advanced nowadays, but the core structure of it all still goes back to World of Warcraft. So Warcraft was my introduction to like coordinating with people for raids, going off on like dumb PvP missions, grinding, having an online status, online reputation, online community. It was my teacher. It was my teacher for what I do. What I do with YouTube nowadays wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for World of Warcraft. So WoW was a very tough teacher, and it's all on me because it had those great, like I never knew how to type without looking at my keyboard until I played WoW. So I realized I have to learn how to type without looking at my keyboard if I'm going to fight efficiently. So that forced me to learn. And it put me on a crash course for learning all kinds of other like nuances of the online world. And yeah, I mean, ultimately the game, like I almost flunked out of college because of it, because of an online girlfriend I met through it in my freshman year that almost flunked me out too. Not her fault, me being addicted to the game and to her or whatever, but it all climaxed in like my sophomore year of college, where I realized I had my first grown-up moment where I'm like, my life will be destroyed if I don't stop like this game. I have to be responsible with self-control. And I stopped playing it. And I would come back every few years to play an expansion and run around and goof off. But it never ever came close to the levels of addiction that came from the Burning Crusade, the second expansion. So it's an odd thing to say that my number one is a game that almost destroyed my life, where it almost made me flunk out of college and made me have a long distance relationship that was very turbulent and scarring. But World of Warcraft was a teacher to me on a very personal level of how to be an online, like, I guess, user, both as like a consumer and as an entity. And as far as the game itself goes, it was magnificent. Just running around being like, that person over there is another person, that's another human being as a night elf. Oh my god. And to this day I still have fond memories of like running off to raids and our little like hodgepodge of a alliance guild. We had no idea what we were doing. There was this one person called Kiss Girl, and it was like this South Korean girl playing as a night elf male, and she was incredibly good, but she couldn't speak English, and she had like a translator with her in the guild who tried to like communicate Korean into English to be like, she wants that staff, she wants the, and it was I don't know, so many memories. And I'll end it on this though, but like, it's one of those things where I became viciously sentimental about. And every time I come back to the game, which becomes diminishing returns on that front, I realize, like, even when they reintroduce Classic, like, I'm like, it's not the same feeling. Like, Warcraft came at a time where it was before social media. And I think social media has ruined it. Where that feeling of being, like, in your Ventrilo chat or Mumble chat and being on the cusp of a very new and emerging genre of gaming and also of online communication and community and culture, like, that's never coming back because we're past those days by a long shot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I never played WoW back in the day. I ended up playing for a little while when Kata came out, because my friend, again, Devin, was super into WoW, and he got me on Recruiter Friend for a bit, and I played it. By then, I mean, Kata was a totally different game than
It was.
like, Vanilla and Burning Crusade, so I didn't really gel with me too much.
You came out of the
Unfortunately,
game. That's like the beginning of the decline, by the way.
yeah. I mean, it was an aptly named expansion.
It was. You're right.
I think like the cool thing, like talking from your perspective, talking about it, like before social media, right? Me and you, we talk to random people all the time, right?
All the
Because
time.
we're on Twitter, people add us, we go on, POS podcast and stuff, and like people are matching us questions, so like having that kind of like line of social interaction is pretty normalized for anybody who wants to be online. But like in 2004, when Vanilla drops, like that is a total paradigm shift in terms of how you're interacting with people on the internet. Because before, like you said, you had AIM and stuff like that, or like event server, but like those are all mostly people that you've like interacted with in some way before. Like I talked to my friends from high school on AIM, and maybe some random artist I'd meet through DeviantArt, but that was like it, but you didn't have like Twitter, where it's just like a feed of stuff coming in from random people that you could just message at any point in time. So to be in a world, literally, where all of a sudden there's hundreds of people that you can interact with whenever you want. And it's almost better than social media because now everybody has common ground. You're all into World of Warcraft. So everybody who's around you, you can approach and have a discussion with and have common ground to kind of spin off from.
And there's a grind to it too, where it's like you can see a person's avatar by their armor, by their rank. There's a status recognition. Not saying that everyone needs to be measured by their status or how prolific they are as a player, but you're right. There was a common denominator with WoW, and that was, you can identify that in other folks. Like, oh shit, you're a Grand Marshal? Fuck me, man. You know how to fight. Like that, or you're at least dedicated or whatever. But now it's a lot more. It's weird because the internet is a lot more centralized in a lot of ways. But like, it's almost overwhelming how much culture there is. I use that term lightly, but like TikTok, Tumblr, Instagram, DeviantArt, Facebook. And even then, there's so many like tendrils to every single individual site I just listed. But Warcraft felt so unique. I said this with Halo, so forgive me for being derivative. But like, even to a greater extent because of the internet, it was like this online arena, and was like, I guess, at least to me, like an introduction to social media, even though it technically wasn't strictly social media.
Sure. No, I mean, it's interesting that you bring that point up because both World of Warcraft and Halo 2 came out in 2004. Like that was a fucking year.
That was that. Yeah, I know that. Like World of Warcraft 2 was like, it took well, World of Warcraft as well. Like Halo 2, I think felt a lot more like official with its launch, like bam, what up, versus World of Warcraft, where it's like it took a year, but then folks were like, holy shit, this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like one of the things with games now that's like kind of a negative in terms of the internet, and this obviously still happened back then, but it just wasn't as big because you didn't have these centralized platforms. Is like, if you want to get good at like Final Fantasy 14 online, right? So it's a similar kind of more modern example. You can just go on YouTube and just like have someone tell you in 20 minutes how to get good at the game. Like, It's kind of like we have systems where like all this shit there's an equation for it now. You're like, go here, do this for 20 minutes, mine this for like 2 hours, whatever. You can like very quickly kind of just like mechanize your progression to get to like a good point in the game. But like when WoW first comes out, like it's this whole big expansive universe, and the internet isn't like kind of robust enough yet to like instantly document and demystify it. So it really felt like a world.
Right.
Like it's just like,
well, you had to go on.
What the fuck's gonna happen? Like, I don't fucking know.
We don't know. It was a group like effort to address some of these things, and then with different levels of like the extreme, like insane people who'd go raid immediately, or the more casual players, or the ones who are role players. It had a lot of layers to it. And you're right. Like, it wasn't like just hot. I mean, YouTube existed, but it was very much so in its infant state. But like, if you wanted to discover something, like you got to go to Wowhead or whatever, and And like, nowadays, like, it's all on the silver platter, and that's fine. I'm not gonna be one of those old types where I'm like, it was better back then. It wasn't. It's
just different.
It's a lot more efficient. But I think this actually kind of harkens back to, or whatever, calls back to a previous thing I said, where hardships create memories that make us feel like, we went through the grind, and I now cherish it because it was a grind. And I feel like it's rewarding to look back on that grind. I see that with World of Warcraft, and maybe that's part of why I feel so sentimental about the original, like vanilla and Burning Crusade. But like nowadays, if there's an online game I'm struggling with, or any game for that matter, I'm just going to Google, boom, or I can go find a YouTube video or somebody who's done it, because there will be somebody who's done it by then.
Absolutely.
What's your number one? I'm curious.
My number one is Devil May Cry, the original.
Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, this game changed my life. Devil May Cry. I liked video games as a kid. I was very addicted to video games. Then I went to my friend's house when he got a PS2, and I played Devil May Cry 1 for the first time, and that's when I realized that like video games were the best thing ever made. It was kind of like awful, you know, because like I went there to hang out with him, and he's like, "Dude, try out this game. It's kind of cool." And then I didn't talk to him for like 8 hours. I just beat the whole game in one sitting, nonstop. Like forgot that anyone was even there. It was the coolest thing ever. It was because like I had played Sega Genesis as a kid, so I'd played like, you know, Streets of Rage and Revenge of Shinobi, like the old like 16-bit one. So I'd played action games before, but I had never played anything this visceral, this rewarding, this intense. And to this day, like very few games have swordplay that feel as good as the original Devil May Cry. Just the way the animations, the sound effects, and the vibration on the controller, like that game has some of the best sword duels in games. I know like people who are big fans of like Dark Souls are like, "You're fucking Ornstein and Smough, you bitch." It's like, no, you don't understand. You're talking about a completely different kind of sensory reward playing something like Dark Souls. Like if you want to like fight another swordsman, and when your swords clash, it feels like two heavy pieces of steel clanging against each other in this desperate like struggle between two superhuman swordsmen. But like your avatar is Dante. He doesn't give a shit. He's having a grand old time, even though you're like breaking your controller in half trying to keep up. It's amazing. The original Devil May Cry was such a revelation for me, and it really was like the thing that planted the seed of like, I want this to be a part of my life. Like this is what I want to do. Like I want to like, whether it's like writing about games, because like I couldn't stop talking about this game for so long, and I was reading on the internet everything I could come up like more of it, and I had to like trick my family into buying the game for me, because like even though I just gotten a PS2, my parents were like, "You can't play M-rated games," so I'm like, haha, my grandmother rated game is Grammy, go get a video game. So I was able to ninja that into the and get it. And so to this day, that is like the standard for every action game I play. Subconsciously, I don't even realize I'm doing it until like I sit down and start thinking about it. Like when I played God of War 2018, I was like, how's this play compared to Devil May Cry? Didn't stack up as well, but it was still good. You know, everything, like it changed, it reframed completely like my benchmark for how third-person games should be. And it was just like so fucking cool. Dante was such a badass character. You know, the first thing he does, like little fucking like 15-year-old me, like, oh, I'm gonna play PlayStation, and like the intro screen comes up. This game contains explicit scenes of violence and gore. I'm just like, oh shit! And then all of a sudden, the bullets start hitting the screen, and like the fucking logo explodes, and I'm just like, oh shit! This is the best thing ever. And like 10 minutes into the game, some Matrix-looking chick fucking stabs him with his own sword, and then he's like, oh no, the main character's dying, and he just laughs, takes out his guns, and starts shooting a motorcycle in the middle of the air until it blows up, and he just walks up and casually pulls the sword out of him, like, this is the greatest thing ever made, holy shit, and then you get to play as that guy, and you're just as much of a badass, and he just laughs at all the bosses you fight. Oh man,
well, now I gotta play this game. That sounds amazing.
Dude, it's so fucking good. And just the way that like it was so smart in terms of like, because the whole point of this game was not just to like kill things, but to be stylish doing it. This was like one of the first games that had a style system. So the better you were at the game, it would rank your your encounters, and it rewarded you because you got more in-game currency to buy more skills to do more cool combos with the better you played the game. And it was just like it had nailed the essentials in terms of just making combat feel better than anything else I'd ever played, and like still better than like 99% of everything I've played. There are like a handful of games that come close to that kind of game feel, and most of them are just the Devil May Cry sequels. And just like fighting Nioh Angelo. Like if you want like one of the coolest sword duels in games, it's the Nioh Angelo fight, because like what was cool about Devil May Cry 1 was that it's a small game. You can beat it in a couple hours. Because it originally started life as Resident Evil 4. Before we got Resident Evil 4. Shinji Mikami was working on this game, and it was going to be Resident Evil 4, the big tentpole Capcom title for the PS2. And the game just got so different from the previous installments. They were like, it's not even really a Resident Evil game anymore. And then one of the biggest features of the game, like the air juggling, because you can like take your sword and like knock guys into the air, and while they're in the air, you take out your guns. You can just shoot them in the air and keep them juggled up there, and all this crazy stuff. That was from like, that was like, they added that because Mikami, or I think it was Mikami, or one of the guys from the Devil May Cry staff, went across the doors to see the team and Capcom working on Onimusha. And you could do that in Onimusha, like, oh, this is so fucking cool. And they're like, oh, that's a bug. We need to fix that. Like, you're not supposed to be able to do that. And they were just like, write that down. And they literally made the bug intentional in Devil May Cry. And it like went on to define the combat of the entire series as like air juggling became more and more a part of the series. But it was just like such a revelation, you know? And the industry took note. Like so many games trying to like copy what that game did came out after the fact, but no one ever really stuck the landing. Like even the game's sequel right after Devil May Cry 2 was a disaster. It was really bad, which was probably like one of the most like scarring memories of my childhood, waiting Devil May Cry 2 is going to come out, and then I open up Electronic Gaming Monthly, flip to the reviews section, and I realize Game of the Month is not Devil May Cry 2. I'm like, oh no. I flip further, it's like 5 out of 10. I'm like, oh no.
Sacrilege.
It was a nightmare. I was like, what happened? The dream is dead. But yeah, it was that was the game that made me like fall in love with video games for real, and like realize that like I'm gonna be playing games forever, because I never want to miss another experience like this. And I mean, it wasn't too long after that when I started like flirting with the idea of making video games. So like, I want to make things like this. And it took me, another 10, 15 years to actually start it for real. Because let me tell you, making video games in 2004 is nothing like making video games today. It was much harder. But without that initial spark, like everything I'm doing right now, like would not exist. So like, it literally changed my life and made me realize what I wanted to be as a human being. So how could I not give it the number 1 slot?
That's awesome. I love that. I want to play the game. I feel, you sold me on it. I guess to summarize this entire video before we close things out is that I think it's such a human experience, because we're like just like empty slates in a lot of ways, and we're introduced to different games, and sometimes a game vibes with you, sometimes it does not, sometimes it just it automatically clicks and it's like profoundly like impactful on you. I mean, like the way things went with me in World of Warcraft felt like like I fused with it in a way. And then like having Halo or Kingdom Hearts, these games, like it's not like I walk up to them and I'm like, this is the game I'm going to like be all about. I mean, not to say that there isn't like some kind of level of excitement or anticipation, but like for Devil May Cry for you, I mean, the day before you had no idea what was about to happen to you. You had no idea it was about to change your life, and to this very day you still talk about it and talk about how like the ripples of the outcome. Same thing with me in WoW. It's cool. I mean, games, just the same way with books, movies, shows, experiences. I mean, they are experiences. They can shape us and kind of fan the flames of whatever emotion or feeling that like resonated like from, wow, it's Combat 4. This is what games can be. Or, wow, this is World of Warcraft. I can talk to another player like in person. well, in person, quote unquote. These moments that are just kind of eye openers.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's it for now, folks. Those are our top 5, I guess, most influential games to ourselves and I guess personal favorites. And this is just more of a way for Tom and I to just catch up, talk about games, share our stories, and now continue on with the march of different uploads that range from like quick vid reviews from Tom and myself, and I got a furry dating sim game on the horizon, and of course plenty of what's ruining topics for us to have a go at. So thanks folks for subscribing and following, and we'd love to hear your comments below as far as what games mean a lot to you and why.
Yeah, I mean, always looking for more recommendations. So there's huge holes in my library in terms of things I haven't played. So anything that you think is worth checking out, definitely let me know.
Mobile games notwithstanding.
Well, you know,
Or
there's a couple good mobile games back in the day.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.
Goodbye.